everyone. You are listening to the latest Flyers Talk podcast presented by Great Railing. I am Jordan Hall, and as always, I am joined by the wonderful Brooke Destra and the wonderful Taryn Hatcher. And I know my friends here are happy with that opening night win for the Flyers, a 6-3 win over the Penguins. A lot of positives out of this one. I think we heard so much about the Flyers' depth. This team is scary on paper. It looks deep. It was not all talk. It was on display Wednesday night in that season-opening win at the Wells Fargo Center. Joel Farabee, 4 points. Oscar Lindblom scores a goal in his return. Nolan Patrick scores a goal in his return. Brooke, what was your biggest takeaway? If you had to pick one of those three, what were you kind of most excited or happiest to see?
Well, first of all, I think it's crazy that Voracek was the only forward that did not register a point.
Yeah.
That says it all right there. And that's not saying Voracek had a bad game. That's just saying how great everyone played. Yeah. But on top of that, I mean, just in the terms of feel-good moments in sports, I mean, even when Nolan Patrick scored in the intra-squad scrimmage back on Sunday, we were like, oh my God, this is great for him. He's getting back on the wagon. Everything's great. And then he comes out and he scores again opening night. And then, I mean, come on. The fact that they changed the scoring from Konechny to Lindblom, it goes to show you that I just felt so happy for the both of them, because I'm sure that it felt great. And Lindblom was saying all throughout training camp how, he wants to help the Flyers as quickly and as much as he can. And to do that on opening night, I mean, you couldn't ask for anything better. So it was feel-good hockey, and it was dominant hockey. And, oh, man, way to set the scene for the 2021 season.
Yeah, and now the Flyers are 5-0 in their last 5 season openers, so they have a tendency to, I think, get fans excited with a nice little opener. But I think we learned last season with the season opening win in Prague over the Blackhawks that that wasn't a mirage. That team was pretty good, and they were going to do something later in the season, and they did. Same with these Flyers. I don't think this is just it's no fluke. I think this team is deep, and they can put up 6 goals. Taryn, your biggest takeaway from that season opening win?
I mean, the thing is that is so reassuring to me is that some of the biggest storylines coming out of that game aren't even the biggest storylines in my mind. I mean, the power play, Jordan, you had a great stat last night. The Flyers were 4 for 52 in the return to play tournament on the power play, and they were 2 for 2 after the first period. Like I said, that was Jordan's stat that I just totally pulled here. And that, I mean, that power play looked impressive. The other thing, and I still don't think it's talked about enough, was I thought Joel Farabee looked so good in that intra-squad scrimmage. He was the beginning of the sequence on both of Kevin Hayes' goals. Like, he started those sequences. And I get that sometimes the secondary assist guy, like, they don't get the same mention, but he was kind of the maestro of both of those goals. And then last night, he was the maestro that the way he handled the puck just long enough to draw defenders towards him and then dish it off to Gustafsson, who one-times it, and that's how they score both of their JVR's goal and Nolan Patrick's goal. That started with Joel again, and then Joel ends with 4 points and gets his own goal. It's some of these storylines, not to mention, oh, by the way, we didn't even talk about, I know Sidney Crosby had like a weird goal that by all means, I think if any other player is in that situation with Carter, it's a scare. It's not a goal. That requires so much hand-eye coordination to stop a puck out of the air like that so that it's dead on the ice in front of you and then one hand backhanded into the goal. If that's not Sidney Crosby, that doesn't happen like that. But Sidney Crosby, whether it was on the power play or 5-on-5, did not stand out. And Malkin was bad. So, and we didn't even talk about it. We didn't even talk about it because there were so many other positives to talk about. So I don't want to get, too high on game one. But, for me, there were a lot of question marks about what the Penguins and even the Bruins were going to look like this year, given their off season or the Penguins in the bubble and the way they performed this, that, and the next thing. I wasn't sure. And obviously this game was more back and forth than the score shows for 2 periods and 5 minutes. But at the end of the day, like when you have your fourth liners going out there and putting together maybe the prettiest sequence of the game to score a goal on Michael Raffl's goal, and then you just break things wide open, it's always a great sight to see. I mean, there's so many positives that you could pull from last night's game.
So true. Like you look at that fourth line, fans and the team, everyone loves that fourth line. Like those are some good players. Michael Raffl's been in the league for a while. He's been with the Flyers. He can score goals. Scott Lawton led the team in the return to play tournament with 5 goals. We know he can climb the lineup. Nicholas Aube-Kubel is such a good compliment, such a good bottom 6 player. That's their fourth line. There is a lot of excitement about the depth. And I was one that said, hey, I want to see it first. I want to see it. It looks good on paper, but I want to see it. And they put it on display. Joel Farabee was 11th on the Flyers last season in points. He had 4, leads the team. He never had more than
leads the league right now.
Leads the league.
I know it's half the league hasn't played yet, but I'll take what we can get.
I mean, Joel is a really underrated storyline in camp. I think because there's just so many other headlines that grab readers first. So those are the things that you touch on first. But like Joel, I said this in a podcast weeks ago. Joel last year when he came in, if you look at his like height and weight on paper, I get that he was listed at like 160 something to start. Somebody was like, that could be years old. I actually don't doubt that he was 160 to start. I do think he put on like 10 pounds of muscle throughout the season, but he was very thin when he started the year last year, and now he's up to like 184. Yep. Joel used to look small no matter who he stood next to. And like Claude Giroux is not the biggest guy. Oscar Lindblom is a pretty slight guy, but they just looked like they were fully matured. Joel looks fully matured. Like Joel looks like he didn't shy away from physicality before, but now he looks like he's capable of combating some of that physicality as well as not just, getting in there and mixing it up a little bit.
Yeah, I think my favorite thing about Farabee is, and I've been so high on this aspect of his game basically since he entered the Flyer system, is that he is able to have one season in any league under his belt and adapt so naturally to the style of play. Like he is just that kind of player that picks up on things quickly and is immediately able to apply that to his style of game. He did that in his first year at Boston University, and he did that his first year with the Flyers. And while he didn't just make an immediate impact last season like some people might have expected, I think he's really priming himself to have this kind of breakout season, and to do that in his second year in the league for as young as he is. I mean, that's huge for the Flyers, and it doesn't look like it's stopping anytime soon. If you come out the top of the season firing from all cylinders, I mean, 4-point game, it took him 10 games last season to score 4 points, and he did it in less than 15 minutes last night. I mean, that's all that sets the scene for the entire season for Farabee. He's going to become such a crucial element to this team's success. And I mean, man, it was so fun. Like every time the Penguins scored and tied that game up last night, I remember sitting there, I'm like, I'm not concerned.
Yeah.
I can't tell you the last time I've watched a Flyers game that was so back and forth and I was like, that's it. I felt so comfortable that the Flyers were finally going to close a game out. I never thought I'd say that. Here we are.
Right. It's so true, Brooke. How often, third period Wednesday night, they're up 3-2, Penguins get an early goal about 3 minutes into the third, and in years past, you would think, here we go. Penguins, Sidney Crosby, the Malkins, and the Flyers are going to blow this. They're going to crumble. What do you know? They rip off 3 goals and just basically turn it into a party. It turned into a rout, and that's the mentality of this team now. They are confident in all situations, late in games, big moments, early in the game. There's confidence across the board, and that has to be exciting, Taryn. And you think about it, Claude Giroux, Sean Couturier, Jacob Voracek, and Travis Konecny, they combined for no goals and 3 assists. I think that just shows you how deep this team is. Taryn, are you How high are you right now on this team? Or are you saying, hey, it's game 1 and 56. Let's see a little bit more. Let's see what they do Friday night.
I want to see Friday. Yeah. I do want to see Friday because goaltender situation interests me. Carter has historically not been strong in back-to-backs. I know this is not a back-to-back. It's 2 games in 3 days. That's not super out of the ordinary. But I am interested to see, because at some point they probably are going to ask him to play back-to-back games, and it's, I have full confidence, I've said a million times, in Brian Elliott. But I do want to see what they do, because you also want to, we don't really think about this as an issue with Alain Vigneault, and we're very fortunate that we have Alain Vigneault as a coach of this team. But you don't want to see anybody get too high on themselves. I think there was a bit of, like, what you just mentioned about Jake Voracek, Claude Giroux, Sean Couturier, like, no goals and 3 assists also gives me a bit of, like, PTSD of the bubble and coming out of the round robin, and you're just like, oh my God, everyone's contributing. We're unstoppable. All 4 lines, and our defensemen are getting involved. And then it's, at times, you need Claude Giroux and Sean Couturier and Jake Voracek to get in there and do what they're, paid to do, and I have faith that they will. But yeah, it's just, I don't think you can award anyone the Stanley Cup after 1 game. That being said, like, I certainly feel better about the East if the Penguins look like they looked last night throughout the season, because it looked somewhat similar to how they looked in the bubble, which was a little bit listless. I will say that it is really bizarre being in the Wells Fargo Center for a rivalry game, and there's the only energy in that building is on the ice, and that is weird. And so some teams may adjust to it, especially teams that had more experience in the bubble. May adjust to it and do fine. I think the Flyers have a ton of advantage having returning players and their experience in the bubble. But that's weird. Like, and it's also strange because I'm at ice level for most games. It's like a sound funnel, and it's also like an energy funnel down there. And so you can feel when a crowd believes that this team is going to, pull it off. How you were saying, Brooke, like, you're watching, you're just not worried. When there's no one there, it's really completely on the players to source their own confidence and their own motivation. Mm-hmm. And that's interesting to watch, because here in Philly, I think Carter was really good at Wells Fargo Center for a lot of reasons, but one of them I do think was, like, people just, like, sent their confident vibes at him, mm-hmm. and I think he feasted off of it. It is a little interesting. I don't know. It's strange. We'll see if like a team like the Penguins can adjust to it, because it certainly looked like Malkin didn't adjust to it last night. I mean, he was skating around, not doing anything. So who knows?
Sports bettors, are you ready? Are you ready for a faster way to win? When you bet with PointsBet, you get faster bets, faster withdrawals, and faster rewards at your fingertips. All on an easy-to-use app. See for yourself why bettors are calling PointsBet innovative, lightning quick, and the reason they have ditched other books. Experience this premium sportsbook for yourself and sign up with the code NBCPOD100 to get $100 in free bets when you deposit $20. That's $100 on your first $20 deposit. So, are you ready? Terms and conditions apply. Void where prohibited. Must be 21 years or older. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
All month long, NBC Sports Philadelphia presents Headstrong, Men's Health and Sports Headstrong, a series about men's health told through powerful stories involving the athletes we love. Learn more on NBCSportsPhiladelphia.com/Headstrong. Taryn, I think it's a fascinating storyline. I really do, about how teams will generate their own energy, because you think about it, no fans, of course, all season for the most part. And it's a 56-game season, so it's shorter. So, like, you're bound, I think, when playing the same team 8 times and having no fans in the building, you're bound to maybe have a letdown here and there of like just not feeling the energy that you should every single game. And then these games are crucial. It's 56 games. It's not 82. So you can't really afford too many of those. So that will be a fascinating storyline. But Brooke, I want to ask you and Taryn, concerns. Not everything was red carpet and roses. You know, we will have concerns after one game, even a 6-3 win. Brooke, is there anything that maybe caught your eye in terms of concerns moving forward after game one?
I think, and this is basically what I saw for the majority of last season as well, the Flyers are a team that progressively get better as the game progresses. And I really just want to be able to see them come out at their A game. You know, like don't spend the first 10, 15 minutes of each game kind of warming up. And I know that is the first game of the season and you really can't, you know, make an entire assumption based off of game one. But that's something that has been the case right now for I feel like a year for this team. So if they're able to adapt and to kind of just start punching right from the minute the puck drops at the beginning of the game, I think it's going to not only solidify just how threatening this team could be, but it's like if you're at your end, nobody's able to really play 120% from start to finish. It happens. You know, you're going to fall off at one point. But if you start strong and you end strong, I think that's basically where I'm at right now. Come out strong. And then if they have those kind of closing third periods that they had, they're scary. They're scary, man. And I say it like this because national media is recognizing how good the Flyers are right now. And it takes a lot for people to recognize that in Philadelphia because no one ever wants to say, Philly's good.
Yeah.
That's all you heard last night across the board is that, oh, man, look at this team. Look at this depth. Look at how they're playing. Man, I don't know. Listen, if the only way you can get Sidney Crosby to score is on a fluke goal like that, I'll take that 100 times over. Because you know that's never going to happen again this season. So
you don't know. You don't with Sidney. You don't know.
Listen, I'm not.
Scott and I were talking about this on post game last night. Sidney Crosby. Part of the lore with Sidney Crosby, I think, especially when it comes to the Flyers, and I remember one last year that wasn't like that, but it was similar. Like the puck just dribbled out behind Brian Elliott, and Sidney Crosby just happens to be there and just tucks it away. Scores the most infuriating goals because they always look like luck. But you know there is like so much skill and detail-oriented stuff behind it that it makes you so mad. But yeah, I have a feeling Sidney will have one more goal this season that just drives you up a wall because I would love to say he didn't deserve that last night, but you could toss a puck at most players slower than Carter Hart cleared that puck, and they would not be able to bat it out of the air like Sidney Crosby did. And it's just and it's just so and most of the time when you smack a puck like that, it doesn't stop dead. I mean, I know I already said this, but I'm just like, even Scott was talking about it. He was like, I would honestly, I'd probably have to do it 10 times in my prime, and maybe one of them I would really be able to hit it dead like that. But at the speed of play, like I don't want to give him any credit because like I grew up a Flyers fan, but I just sat there last night watching it live, and the speed at which he does it, you're just like, this guy.
And it's funny because a lot of people were blasting Carter Hart, not vehemently, but it was kind of like, hey, it's a bad play. And when goalies are outside their crease making a play with the puck and they turn it over, it looks bad. But a lot of that looked bad because Sidney Crosby made it look pretty good.
Carter Hart is also not historically a phenomenal puck handler. No,
that's his one area he needs to work. Yeah.
So I get it, but I don't know. It's Sidney's like still.
He's still really good.
One of the best in the league. Like I think I was watching something on a different hockey network that isn't owned by our company, so I'm not going to say it. But they said that this was like the first time in I think 7 years or something that he wasn't voted in the either number 1 or number 2 in the league this year for top, 100 players or whatever it was. And he's still number 7.
Yeah.
And he's 33.
Yeah.
So, and he's coming off of a major injury year. And, but yeah, it is on Carter, but it's not something to like, and I don't think it's something I'm sure Carter kicked himself, but then he had a bunch of really nice saves in the second period right after that shouldn't tell everyone like he's fine.
Yeah, it's funny. I was telling myself, I'm like, the one thing that kind of stuck out to me when I was trying to maybe look for negatives, I was like, I didn't think Carter played his best game. He still made 31 saves on 34 shots. Like, he wasn't bad. We're just so used to seeing him be perfect. But girls, I'm glad we're on this topic because I've been getting this sense, and Brooke, I'll start with you. It kind of started with last season when you notoriously have seen the Flyers kind of be a tier below the Caps, the Penguins, the Bruins, those teams with those big names that have won. And they really played well against all of those 3 teams. And a lot of those games, some of them were lopsided wins for the Flyers. And we had another one Wednesday, 6-3 over the Penguins, where Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin, they kind of blend in a little bit. And it made me think that maybe those teams, maybe those windows are starting to close. And maybe the Flyers are starting to peak. And it's a cycle. The NHL is a cycle a lot. And it made me seriously think maybe the Caps window is closing. Maybe the Penguins window is closing on Malkin and Crosby. Maybe the Bruins with Bergeron and Marchand. Maybe they're starting to tail off a little bit. And maybe the Flyers are starting to climb. Do you sense that at all?
Yeah. It's about damn time. But also I can't sit here and just willingly write off the Penguins because of Crosby, and I can't write off the Capitals because of Ovechkin. No. That would be unrealistic. But that being said, it could be a hot take. People might roast me for this at the end of the season. I don't see the Penguins making the playoffs this year.
Yeah.
I don't. I think based off
what 4 teams for you, what 4 teams in the East do you think off the top of your head right now, who are you thinking? Because that's a very fair point. The Penguins might be on the outside looking in.
Yeah. So, I mean, I had in our predictions, I have that the Flyers are going to finish in the East second, which I thought that was being comfortable. I think they have a very strong chance of finishing top of the East if they play the way that they did Wednesday. But again, you can't make those assumptions based off of one game. Sure. You see the Bruins, you see the Capitals, and I think that it's that 4th spot that's going to go back and forth because, I mean, how can you not think that the Islanders are going to find their way back into the playoffs after they made the conference finals last year? Mm-hmm. So it's not, again, the East is the most ridiculous division in the league this year. It's nothing new. It's been that way for the past few years, but now you throw Boston in there. It's like, you can never catch a break. But if this happened a few years ago, I'd be really mad. We're looking at it this year, and I'm like, you know what? Yes, it's tightly knit. The competition is high, but the Flyers can match it, if not top it. So I see a lot of things, but I don't see the Penguins making the playoffs this year. Ah, ha, ha, ha. Thank God.
Brooke is taking a lot of joy in saying that.
I find so much joy when the Penguins lose, and it hasn't happened a lot. It happened a few times last year, but over the past few years, it has stunk. It's been crappy. I need to enjoy it. Let's start the season off on a high note.
I think fans are going to be on board with Brooke there. Taryn, what about you? Do you think the Penguins could be on the outside looking in this division?
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at I was listening to Elliot Friedman's podcast, and to me, like, he is gospel. He knows everything, and and he was saying there is 2 really good teams are not going to make the playoffs of the East. 2 very good teams that would make the playoffs easily, if not win the division, and any other division will not make the playoffs. And there is a high probability it could be the Penguins or even the Bruins, given the loss of Chara and Torrey Krug. So there's, and Pasternak is dealing with an injury and literally just skated for the first time, like, I think a few days ago. Mm-hmm. And Patrice Bergeron is now, I mean, he's still Bergeron, and
think he's
Still
46.
always in the Selke conversation, but the perfection line at this point is showing hairline fractures, and you start
It's
to
an
wonder,
average line.
well,
Let's rename them for this season.
but
They haven't been perfect for a minute.
yeah, but I mean, there's the biggest thing in the East that scares me. I mean, I think Washington still has a lot left in the tank, obviously. I think for me, it's the Flyers and Islanders. And I think that's actually the battle at the top of the division, because I just think that the Islanders give the Flyers fits, like they do. Flyers should not play their best hockey by any means against the Islanders, obviously, in the bubble. That being said, and Friedman had said this as well, the Islanders really built a team that's suited to navigating any kind of rough waters, because it's very much, this is your responsibility, this is your job, this is what you do, and they never stray. That is what they do. And there was talks about maybe Barzal not wanting to re-sign because that's not a fun brand of hockey for him to play, especially the way he plays the game and this, that, and the next thing and everything in between. But that does prepare a team for this situation, and I'll be very interested to see what they look like and how they play. But yeah, I mean, especially looking at a Pittsburgh team where the guys who normally draw your eye really, I mean, if you had told me, if you'd taken away numbers off all the jerseys, given where I was sitting, for probably like 80% of the game, I couldn't have told you who was Crosby or who was Malkin, other than the fact that Malkin's a giant. So, and that's partially credit to the Flyers, like especially 5-on-5. I mean, really blended in. I'm sure that will change, though. My biggest concern, and you mentioned it before, is that some of these teams are going to take longer to ramp up to the speed of play, and some of them will get there. The Flyers look like they are kind of there. That's partially due to the fact that Alain Vigneault is the best preparation coach, I think, in the league. But my concern becomes, and that's why I said before I'd like to see a larger sample size before I say they're going to go to the Stanley Cup final, how they adjust when other teams ramp up to speed of play. You would hope at that point the Flyers have already adjusted to speed of play, so now they're ramping up to midseason form and, postseason form. But yeah, the Penguins are not in a great spot, and we mentioned it yesterday on the pregame show. Flyers have the 11th best odds to win the Stanley Cup, preseason odds, but they were the third most popular pick in that category by bettors. So behind the Blackhawks, which if you're putting your money on the Blackhawks, God bless your soul, but I don't know what you're watching. And I'm trying to think, and the Avs, that makes sense to me. The Avs are kind of Stanley Cup or bust at this point. But I see, if I look into the future, I think the Islanders are going to be a force to be reckoned with within this division, and I think the Flyers are as well. And I think the Caps get that third spot, and then it's Bruins and Penguins trying to figure it out, because I don't think Boston is who they were last year. And a lot of people don't think Boston is who they were last year. So we shall see.
Look, there's really no other way for me to say it. You're missing out. If you're not playing this, you're missing out. It's the free contests on the NBC Sports Predictor app. They've already handed out over $3 million in cash prizes, and there are tens of thousands more up for grabs this and every week. So get in on the action right now with the NBC Sports Predictor app powered by PointsBet.
Flyers Talk is presented by Wells Fargo. Whenever our communities need us, Wells Fargo is here to help.
It should be a really fun division. Like we said, it is stacked. It's going to be competitive hockey, a lot of big names, a lot of big teams. Even a team like the Sabres, they have Jack Eichel, and they go out and get a guy like Taylor Hall, and people really don't think they have a shot in this division. That's how deep it is. For concerns for me, I do worry about the Flyers' 5-on-5 play a little bit. I thought they could have been better. There were some instances in the night where I thought the Penguins really pinned them in the defensive zone, and Flyers had a ton of trouble. I think if the Penguins capitalize on a few chances there, could be a different game. And then I'm really with Taryn there too, and I'm sure Brooke probably feels the same way. The Islanders definitely scare me. I just think a stylistic matchup, it's just not a good one for the Flyers. So they're going to be in the Flyers' way. I will say I'm really looking forward to the Flyers and Islanders playing for sure.
Are you? I hate watching the Islanders play. I hate it. If I was an Islanders fan, I would love it. It is the most infuriating brand of hockey to watch.
I think they infuriated the Flyers a lot last season. I really do. You could tell they are frustrating to play against. As a spectator, for me, just watching, you could sense that. I'm excited just for the story. I want to really see how these teams match up again. I want to see what it's like with the Flyers having Lindblom and Patrick back. I'm really anxious to see that.
Yeah.
But Brooke, I wanted to ask you and Taryn, what did you guys think of the defensive pairs? We didn't talk a whole lot about that. Shane Gostisbehere was not available due to COVID protocol. What did you think of the defensive pairs? It was kind of our first look, really, at some of those guys.
Is that public knowledge now?
Yeah, the league announced it last night that Gostisbehere was out because of COVID protocol. COVID protocol, we have it on the website at NBCSportsPhiladelphia.com. It can be a player can be out for COVID protocol for a number of factors, and the league outlines that. So it's not that he definitively or definitely tested positive for COVID. It could be a number of things that the league is taking.
And this was something that, and I'll most people know this, so I hope I'm not overstepping and saying this, because it's going to be a concern throughout the league. Gostisbehere's fiance works, she is a nurse. Right. And I remember when I was traveling with the team when COVID's rumblings first started before the season was paused, my roommates at the time were 2 nurses. Mm-hmm. And I had heard of plenty of other players around the league who have significant others or parents or brothers and sisters who work in hospitals. And there was a lot of that being said, my mom works at a hospital. All of the hospital workers she works with are fine. And if any of them get it, they say point blank 100% they did not get it at work. So, but it could be as simple as his fiance was exposed, vis-a-vis, et cetera, et cetera. But I don't know that that's the case. I have not heard anything about it. So but it's just an interesting storyline to keep track of throughout the league as we see it popping up all over the place. Especially teams hit hard like Dallas, that this is going to be a very real issue. You can't expect to ask a player to not see or be around certain family members, fiancés, if your kids go to school. I mean, kids at school are going to be probably the most dicey part would be my guess, but sorry, went on a COVID tangent. But it is, it was something that was mentioned to me when I was traveling with the team, was like, oh, 2 of your roommates are nurses. This was before anybody knew anything, and there were PPE concerns and everything else. But it'll be interesting to see how they combat that.
Yeah, and the COVID protocol is very thorough, and I think good for the league. It's about 5 or 6 different factors of a player could be out for COVID protocol, and they outline it. So, and you know what? If Shane Gostisbehere, maybe there was a close contact, whatever it may have been, good for him if he stepped up and said, hey, here's what happened. Yeah. We need to be safe here.
You don't want a Dallas situation.
Right.
Here.
And you know what? I feel for Shane Gostisbehere. The guy was about to play with Ivan Provorov possibly on the top pair. They were really going to give him a chance to be like, get out there and show you what you can do. You're healthy. And when he's out because of COVID protocol and misses the opener. But I will say I don't love the Justin Braun, Ivan Provorov pair. I think the train of thought might have been, hey, put Provy with
I didn't like it. No. I didn't like it in camp. I didn't like it in the game. Just nix it. Nix it now. I like a lot of things that they do. No. I'm done with that. Nix it.
I really wanted to ask you about that, bro. My thought is, okay, they want to put him with a veteran right now to start off because he did so well. Provorov with a veteran guy. Who would you like? Brooke is shaking her head furiously. But if not Justin Braun, who would you like to see possibly next to Mr. Provorov?
After last night, I want to see Gustafsson
Okay.
with Provorov. And I know it's an interesting pairing between those two because, first of all, we haven't even talked about Gustafsson on the podcast. I think he came out and did exactly what Flyers fans were hoping for him to do, because
Spark the power.
his first like 2 shifts, people were like, oh no, like why did we sign him? This single acquisition that the Flyers got in the offseason wound up being a product of 2 points in both power plays. So welcome to Philly.
Yes.
I just think it would be really interesting if you want to. I don't like Provorov and Braun. I don't think Braun needs top pair minutes. And listen, he's at par at best.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think that, especially with the kind of expectations that you're putting on Provorov this year, you're going to need to put him with somebody who has kind of the same amount of like driving force, I guess, when it comes to the game.
Because they're asking him to do a lot, and then you kind of have him with like a third pair type of guy that's more of a stay at home.
No, Justin Braun should not be next to Ivan Provorov. Get it? Like,
so I talked to Mike Yo on Tuesday, who obviously, you know, focuses on the defense, kind of coaches the defense, about what the thought process would be with Ivan, because you're in an interesting predicament here. They love Travis Sanheim and Phil Myers together, and they would like to have set D pairs like they had last year. They had an ideal situation once they figured it out last year. It was very much Niskanen and Provy number 1, Sanheim Myers number 2, with a Hagen Braun number 3. And everybody knew the role, and everybody kind of had complementary games. And it just worked. And this year, the only remaining pair they have is Sanheim and Myers. And for the sake of having any structure, they would like to keep them together, which I like. But then you have this interesting issue of Provorov had a good production year last year. Do you put him with Justin Braun, who's a stay-at-home guy, which allows Provorov to get involved more? I think the theory and the hope and the potential of the thought is good. In practice, does not work. And then, you know, if you think about pairing him with Gustafsson, that now looks like the best option. But as we read, and he had a good showing last night, but as we read in the offseason, one of the biggest critiques of Gustafsson is that he likes the offensive side of playing a defenseman, doesn't necessarily love the other side of it, which then forces Ivan to be a stay-at-home guy, which really takes away a dynamic part of Ivan's game.
And I also, now that I'm looking at it, I really don't like the thought of having Robert Hagg and Justin Braun on the same line, because they are kind of very similar in play, like the stay-at-home kind of guy, the not show-offy kind of player. But I just
solid. They're just solid.
They're solid, but it's like
Yeah.
I don't know, something. It's fine. I mean, I didn't sit there and pick apart the blue line last night. I mean, yeah, there were a few kinks here and there that you're like, all right, we can work that out as the season kind of progresses. Yeah. It was only game 1. I can't stress that enough. But
this is where it'll
be really interesting.
This is where, you know, I feel so badly for Shane, and I want so much for Shane to have a wonderful season. I mean, for so many reasons, everybody in that locker room wants Shane to do well. Like, he's just one of the most liked guys. I think he's a great guy, whatever. All of that is true. But you also sit there and you think back to when Shane had a breakout year. Unless I'm mistaken, he was with Provorov for most of that year, no? And he has a prime opportunity to have somewhat of a leash here to succeed, in part because the alternatives are not exactly ideal. And maybe they do break up that Sanheim-Myers pairing and try a Phil-Ivan pairing or a Travis-Ivan pairing. Maybe they do. But, I mean, having Travis and Phil on the ice at the same time is such a force to be reckoned with. The amount of ice they cover, the offensive capabilities of both of them at this point in their career. But yeah, I mean, the sooner the Flyers can get Shane Gostisbehere back, and hopefully he comes back in and he's, Shane, and he's feeling great and he's, all locked in. This would be such a phenomenal season for him to break out again. And I know the Flyers want it desperately, because that would be the ideal, because then you can have Gustafsson and Haig as your third.
Yeah, and they're playing together now. It's a pretty good third. It's a talented guy and a stay-at-home guy. It's like,
Yeah, I mean, you've got a dynamic set all the way down, and then you're just packed in the forward group as well.
Yeah.
So, best wishes to Shane. Just really a bummer for him.
Yeah.
I just would love for him to have a breakout year.
Yeah, I think all fans would love. It was such a fun time when he came up as a rookie and scored 17 goals and was up for Calder. It was just so fun. And then obviously 65 points, fun player. And I think fans are, ultimately most of them are really pulling for him. So, but we talked about it, man. They are deep, forward, D, and of course we know what they got in net. Real fun talking about it with you, Brooke and Taryn, and we'll have plenty more as this 56-game sprint is underway, and the Flyers will see the Penguins again Friday night. But Brooke, Destra, thank you so much as always. Great chatting with you. Can't wait to talk to you again. Taryn Hatcher, thank you so much as well. We can't wait to see you with Scott Hartnell again on pregame and postgame live. And a special thank you to Ben Berry, our podcast producer. Thank you as well. And Flyers fans, of course, as always, thank you. Thank you for listening. This is the latest Flyers Talk podcast presented by Great Railing. Wherever you get your podcasts, please rate and subscribe, and we cannot wait to talk to you next time.